The United Nations Security Council meets to decide whether to defer the case against President Uhuru Kenyatta for at least 12 months. At the same time, the International Criminal Court has ruled to delay the start of the president's trial from November the 12th to February the 5th, 2014. What does this all mean? Is this a typical carrot and stick situation? We have two dynamic guests from completely opposite sides of the political divide. It's going to be an hour to remember. Sit back. It's time to ask the hard questions. It is time for Jeff Koinange Live. And we're going to have both our guests on the show throughout. We have heeded your call, Kikiumana Kiumane, as they say. Here's a reminder, my Twitter handle is @KoinangeJeff, the hashtag JKL. The SMS number is 22155. Let's get to tweeting. Let's have a conversation, because this is a topic that is literally on everyone's tip of their tongue. First up, right next to me, she used to work for Transparency International for quite a few years before she took on the role of Executive Director of AFRICOG, the Africa Center for Open Governance. This is funded by, amongst others, one of the richest people in the planet, George Soros, of the Open Society, as we all know. Gladwell, and I had to say that. And right next to her, oh my goodness, talk about a turncoat. I don't even know which side of the political divide he is, depending on the day. He was ODM for the longest time. He claims he still is. But as soon as March the 9th rolled around, he seemed to have switched sides. Has he? Well, he writes every week in The Star. He's written 137 articles in the last 2 years and 7 months, 24 of them on the ICC. Gunjiri, turncoat Wambugu.
Get short.
I'll get to you in a moment, Gunjiri, but first, let me ask Gladys this question. Gladys?
Gladwell.
I keep saying Gladys, I don't know why.
I don't know either.
Gladwell. Look, ICC today has ruled that to delay the opening of the trial of President Uhuru Kenyatta from November 12th to February 5th, 2014.
Yeah, the third.
The defense is looking at this as a huge victory.
Well, clearly they would. It's their job to project everything that they can as a huge victory. But this is clearly on a legal technicality. The prosecutor has chosen to start her case later because every case, every prosecutor has a theory of their case, of how they want to present their case, of how they want to build up the story. So this is a legal and technical decision.
Yeah,
it
but
is
if they
not
were ready,
a political
Gladwell,
one.
if they were ready.
They were ready. They were ordered by the court to produce certain witnesses. So they chose to, and the defense itself had asked for a delay for very different reasons. So since both of them agreed on a delay, that's what is going to go on. And I think we need to be careful to stop sensationalizing every move at the ICC. Everything that happens at the ICC is explained here, is reported on here in a political manner. This is not political. It's a legal decision.
Yeah. Gunjiri, your thoughts about that? I think, there's some people who are saying, you know what? These people were never ready. They were never ready.
Well, there's some justification to that when you think about the fact that they had to stop Ruto's case for a week after it started, and then they had to ask for a break to get some witness who wasn't there. So there is some justification for those who are thinking that there's a certain element of this case with the prosecution that shows a certain lack of preparedness. But then when I think about what happened today, I think it would be very smart for the defense to look at this as a victory, because it's just part of a process. They asked for time. I guess they need to push the reason why they asked for this delay rather than look at it as a victory of time. Because they said, look, we need this break. If I was defense, I would go back and say, okay, by the way, during this break, can we sort out the issues that we raised on process, on procedure? For me, I would not be out there shouting that I want this.
Yeah. Gladwell, I mentioned at the top of the show, this is sort of like a carrot and stick situation. They're teasing the president's team by delaying the case. At the same time, the UN Security Council, which is going to vote in the coming days, think, or there's some people who don't think that Kenya can get 9 out of the 15 votes. What do you think?
Look, you can sort of construct this sort of conspiracy theory where everything that happens is seen in that light. Now, neither of us are lawyers, so I would be very careful about advising what should be done. We need to understand the legal process here. So, as I'm saying again, it's very important not to misinform Kenyans, and a lot of that is going on, so that everything that happens at the court is seen through a political prism. These are legal decisions for legal reasons, and evidently the defense would like to make their clients believe that the hefty fees they're paying are worth it. So obviously they're going to present everything as being to their advantage. Now, as far as the Security Council is concerned, this is not the first time that Kenya has applied for a deferral, and it has done this several times, even to the point of asking for the case at one time in a completely misadvised fashion. The Ambassador Macharia wrote a letter asking for the cases to be completely stopped, which is a legal impossibility. Now, Kenya is applying yet again for a deferral. The United Nations Security Council did not consider this request before, and I highly doubt that it would now.
But they've agreed to at least to listen to it. And they did it in quick fashion, because AU met not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and already they're looking at this case. Let's
be clear on what's happening here. This is not a formal meeting of the United Nations Security Council. This is a meeting on the margins. It's an informal, interactive exchange. It is not a formal meeting by any means of the United Nations Security Council, and it cannot come out with any real resolution, except the best that Kenya would hope for would be for a referral of the discussion to a formal session of the United Nations Security Council.
You wrote a very powerful article this week about the UN Security Council insisting, in the last couple of weeks, insisting a deferral must take place. Yes. A deferral must come through.
Yes, I still think that. First, it's also important for me to clarify something. Gladwell is making the point that this is a legal process. And yes, it is. But it's got political implications. And for a lot of us non-lawyers, we will look at the political ramifications a lot more closely than we look at the legal ones, especially because we tend not to understand what the legal stuff is going on. However, and then also something else, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to convince me that ICC is not playing politics right now. This decision to actually defer to February, a couple of hours before the informal interactive conversation goes on at the UN Security Council, come on.
Yeah, there's no connection here.
You can tell me it's a coincidence. Some people will believe it's a coincidence.
Gladwell,
I personally don't believe it's a coincidence.
I totally
and then in addition to that, we've had the judge actually discuss about the need to accept some facts. He made a statement, he made a comment about the need. There's some situations that you need to accept. We have seen an amazingly concerted effort by the African Union that wasn't there in 2011, which was the last time that the UN Security Council actually looked at this.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Uhuru is president. He wasn't president in 2011. I know there are a lot of people who say that shouldn't matter. And in the legal process, it shouldn't. But in the political process, it actually does.
Well, actually, the Rome Statute was made precisely to address cases of impunity by leaders. It is addressing leaders. So the whole point of this exercise is that they are going after those who are most responsible, alleged to be most responsible for crimes against humanity. So, and on the other things that you're saying, you're referring to Judge. The Nigerian judge, Chile Ebo Esuji, who went out of his way to make a separate concurring opinion that was actually rejected by his colleague.
Actually, it wasn't rejected, it was just a minimum,
it was arguing extremely selectively, and indeed that was now reversed by the
I don't think you can actually say it was reversed.
Yes,
that was his opinion.
Because
it was a decision he made.
Right.
The other two judges didn't agree with it.
Gladwell, you don't see any special circumstances.
No, he actually was. He had the other judge agreeing with him on Ruto not having to be continuously present at the trial. Now that was reversed on appeal.
No, I'm talking about when he actually commented and said there's some. We also have to take. We're not in a vacuum.
Okay.
That the legal process doesn't
and just
operate in a vacuum.
remember that the United Nations Security Council is being asked under Chapter 7 to defer the situation in Kenya. And now Chapter 7 would require that the United Nations Security Council finds that the security situation in Kenya and in the region is such that continuing with the cases is untenable.
Actually, it also applies the other way around.
Which is kind of the case right now. I mean, Westgate, Somalia, Al-Shabaab.
One moment. I think Westgate cannot be belabored as an excuse. And I find that the speed with which for example, the Deputy President jumped on Westgate to say, oh, we've got to stop this now because I've got to go home and deal with...
So you don't think those are special circumstances?
There have been attacks all along. There have been terrorist attacks in the border areas. There have been grenades being thrown. The reason we have Westgate is because we have had for years unbridled corruption, unrestrained corruption, and human rights abuses for which nobody has been held responsible. Our borders are porous. We just had immigration officials being fired because they were sitting in bars handing out...
We really can't let Gladwell get away with that.
I agree. Jump in there.
Yeah,
Jump in.
We've got terrorist attacks in Uganda. We've got terrorist attacks in America. We've got terrorist attacks everywhere in the world.
Europe,
So unless you're telling me that every country in the world has corruption, has porous borders, terrorism is a distinct security problem. You cannot say that Westgate happened.
We saw what happened at Westgate. Our security forces are not in a situation that you would describe as functional. Okay?
But come on, let's compare that with Uganda.
True.
The bombs, the grenades that were
the World Cup.
Really. I mean,
okay, but the argument here would be that the ICC case going on, it cannot go on because of the situation at Westgate. The ICC case has been going on. There's been no threat to security. There has been no material change in the situation since the United Nations Security Council last found that there was no reason to defer the cases. The cases can go on. They have been going on. Ruto has been going. Kenyatta went to the previous hearings, and he can continue to go on. There is no threat to the security of Kenya.
This is a point I find very interesting.
Through the
Gladwell has completely ignored the fact that Uhuru is now president.
Correct. Before he went as deputy president,
Uhuru ignored the fact that he was indicted at the ICC.
No, he didn't. The law allowed him. The law actually allowed him. Our new constitution allowed him.
In this case, I'll say the politics played a great role.
But see, the politics continue to play a great role.
It doesn't matter. The fact that he's president is, according to Article 27, irrelevant.
You see, this is the problem.
Yeah.
You made a very interesting argument that the ICC was instituted specifically to deal with impunity by leaders.
Yes.
Assad has killed 100,000 people.
Plus.
100,000.
That situation
is
before the Security Council.
It is not before the Security Council.
Before the Security Council. They will be discussing it. And the decisions
At what point does it become crimes against humanity? 100,000 people. And I'm not in any way belittling Gladwell. I'm not belittling. Let me finish this.
From the very beginning, where it was found that the court has jurisdiction. What do you mean? At what point does it crimes against humanity?
A 2-month situation.
Syria
God. Has been going on for 2 years. They have killed 100,000 people. At what point does ICC think that's a crimes against humanity?
And at the same time,
really, I mean,
let's face it. And I'm not a member of the ICC. The Security Council.
Sudan wasn't a member of the ICC.
Yes, the Security Council referred it to
Kenya was not referred by the Security Council.
No, that is why the Security Council will likely be very reluctant to defer this case.
You see,
now Kenya referred itself.
No.
Yes,
Gladwell,
it did.
that line has been used a lot. We did not refer ourselves. We refused to set up a local tribunal.
And the logic.
I mean, let's talk legal. You said let's not talk politics.
No.
Let's talk legal. The legal process of how Kenya got into the ICC was that Ocampo went to the UN Security Council and for the first time in the history of ICC asked for permission to start to initiate a situation.
Judges.
Yes, and asked for permission to initiate a situation in Kenya.
After the situation was triggered, from the situation following from the recommendations of the Waki Commission, which said we must set up a special tribunal.
Yes.
And if that special tribunal is not set up, then the next step is to hand over the envelope which he had given to Kofi Annan
to the ICC
to trigger the process.
So we cannot say Kenya took itself to the ICC. It's important.
It's important
for us to clarify that.
Kenyan initiated initiative. So we cannot now, and you remember, I mean, I am tired of quoting this. We've all heard this. We've got William Ruto on record saying, don't be vague, let's go to The Hague. The Hague will take 90 years,
absolutely.
We'll all be dead.
Well, okay, at the same time, circumstances have changed.
Yes.
These two men are now president and deputy.
Yes.
Why not let them live out their term, if you will, and defer this thing and let them go to the courts once they're out of office?
Under which law?
No.
The law is clear. It says that official capacity is irrelevant.
Deferral.
The deferral says that the United Nations Security Council must find that there is a security situation which justifies a deferral of the case by 1 year.
And
we have not done...
But then there's something else that we need to point out here. A couple of things first that we need to point out. First, it was very important to clarify that issue. I've had this point made several times that we took ourselves to the ICC. We did not take ourselves to ICC.
What did we do?
Number two,
what did
10th Parliament. 10th Parliament let us down. 10th Parliament let Kenya down. The statements about let's not be vague, let's go to The Hague. It's a kind of thing you look back in retrospect and you realize there is no country in the world where their politicians will say that their own people should go and be taken to another court. It is political suicide. We did it.
We did.
We made
eyes
a mistake.
wide open.
And you see, and sometimes we actually need to wake up.
Their eyes weren't wide open. They basically were misinformed and suffering from impunity where they'd never had to pay for anything before.
Here we are. Yeah. We have a situation where we have a case that now actually is complicating how a nation is being run. Now,
we warned about this.
Yes, we did. I actually wrote an article about it.
We
January
have analyses.
This year.
Before the elections.
January this year.
We have analyses of the difficulties of having not just a president, but also his deputy, who are both present at The Hague.
Okay, let me ask you this, Gladwell. If they both went president and deputy right now, would we be making this much noise?
No.
About the ICC?
Yes.
Well, we are using state resources to defend them against The Hague. I don't know what a government under another, under another president would have done, but clearly all political parties have been very reluctant to come out clearly on the side of the
It's political suicide.
Yeah.
And something else.
He knows more about politics than I do. So
it's political suicide.
Yes.
And something else we also must accept. ICC is going through unprecedented waters. So every time I hear them argue that this cannot be done, I'm thinking, you've never had a situation where the prosecutor initiated a case by himself. You've never had a situation where you have a president.
But he has the powers legally.
No, I'm just asking. You've never had a situation where you have a president, a serving president in court. You've never had a situation where you have a serving deputy president.
A sitting president.
This is a sitting president.
Yes.
This is a situation, whether we like them or not.
Milosevic, he was already out.
He was already out.
Okay,
so these are uncharted waters. And I think it is very important for all of us to accept that these are uncharted waters. ICC needs to accept, the president needs to accept, the deputy president needs to accept. And we need to look at, even in court in Kenya, courts actually recognize stature. When a senior counsel walks into a court, he's dealt with in a very different way from a junior counsel. Now, this situation, we have a situation where people are insisting.
This is not so. Our constitution is clear. The president has immunity in all cases except under those situations where, for example, we have signed onto an international agreement which says that he does not have that immunity.
True.
And that is our law.
True.
And the reason you have law is to help you deal with uncharted waters and to deal with it in a principled manner and not to keep on
notice that
changing
there's no
according to the
defense.
circumstances.
There's no defense filing at the ICC asking for immunity. There's none.
No.
It's just a political conversation going outside.
Yeah.
Yes. So what I'm actually talking about is what's happening in the court. An awareness and acceptance that this is unprecedented. Every court, you see, we argue as if, the Bible says men were not made for laws. Laws were made for men. And the example he gave was when he said, your donkey has fallen into a well, it's a Sabbath. Sabbath, they're not supposed to work. Right. So do you let it? Now, we have a situation where we have a law and a situation.
Yeah.
The law is there.
Well, you're not buying this.
No, not at all. And I mean, it's really interesting, Gunjiri, how you've got this, this argument that doesn't seem to be based on any principle at all.
No, it's based on the reality.
On your idea of what reality is.
Okay, Gladwell, you mentioned something important there. You said immunity, the question of immunity. A president is immune up until it comes to international law, right?
Where the country has signed laws which say that he does not have immunity, such as the Rome Statute.
What if the country opts out of the Rome Statute? I'm going to talk about that after the break. What if Kenya opts out of the Rome Statute and we get that 12-month deferral? How does that work intertwined. Also, coaching of witnesses. We have heard there's been lots of coaching going on.
Yeah,
what's the deal with that?
We should be winning World Cups by now with the amount of coaching.
And Gunjiri, you haven't answered your ODM question, man. I'm going to come to that. I haven't forgotten.
All right.
Okay. All right.
I actually still have my card.
Okay. Oh my. Oh my. Or as Gunjiri's people told me in Nyeri not too long ago, wamai, wamai. It is getting smoking on the bench, folks. We're about to take our first break. When we come back, plenty more with these folks who clearly are on opposite sides of that divide. Don't even think touching that remote control. Jeff Koinange live. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Jeff Koinange live on the rooftop of the Intercontinental Hotel. It's like coming in thick and fast. My handle is at Koinange Jeff. Gladwell is at Gladwell Otieno. And of course, Gunjiri is at Gunjiri Wambogo. My goodness, Akango here says, Gunjiri should stop with the lies and pretense about us not taking ourselves to The Hague. Doc Parler, this is worse than a market chatter. Okay, go to bed then. Livingston Odero, what is the Kenyan image and effect on the international relations and diplomacy? Woo, woo. And Wafirst, some guy called Wafirst is saying, this Gladwell Otieno is very good at interruptions. Okay, moving right along, keep them coming. Everybody has an opinion, yes, I guess. Gladwell, witness coaching has been a big thing. I mean, and you know, witnesses retracting their statements. We've seen from day one the delay in Ruto's case because witnesses weren't ready, and then witnesses retracting statements. And then when we listen to them, it sounds like, you know, there's an element of coaching going on. There's contradictions in there.
Well, I mean, the witness coaching is sort of the successful propaganda that's been pushed. There's this storyline being pushed that, for example, civil society is coaching witnesses, etc. I don't think that any prosecutor who's interested in winning a case is actually going to seriously coach witnesses. Obviously, in every case, you prepare. So I think I would basically say that the witness coaching is, as far as I'm concerned, propaganda, which people tend to believe. And I think it's really cynical when you could be informing people to be disinforming them. So on the witness coaching, let's say that the prosecutor has complained that there's been an unprecedented level of intimidation of witnesses in the Kenyan case. We've had cases of witnesses disappearing. We've had cases of witnesses dying. We've had cases of witnesses retracting, witnesses being somehow compromised. And we actually even have gotten to the situation where a warrant of arrest has been issued for the journalist Walter Baraza for attempting to interfere with witnesses. So the Kenyan cases...
Yeah, attempting to interfere, but isn't that coaching?
Well, I don't know what it is he's exactly accused of having done. The coaching meme has grown up in the sort of context where people are saying there's this thing called evil society, which has it in for their leaders and has sort of cooperated with the ICC to bring their leaders into this position, which is obviously absolute rubbish.
Yeah, Gunjiri, your thoughts?
When I listen to Baraza argue or try to make his points, you actually do get a feeling, because he says, I was working with ICC and I did certain things for ICC and I got certain people and I dealt with them in a certain way, then I stopped. And then we started having a conversation and then I stopped cooperating, and now I've been called and a warrant of arrest has been issued. Now, this is him defending himself. So you will most probably not take everything he's saying completely.
Yeah, but on the bench...
But he's got an interesting argument.
He was on the bench, Gunjiri, and he himself said he stopped short of saying witnesses were being coached or were being told what to say. He's just stopped short of that.
Look, again,
one of the things that you must agree is that when you listen to some of the witnesses on the television, and you hear a guy say, I remember exactly what Ruto said, and this is what he said. And Ruto was on a stage with Raila and somebody else, and you have no clue what Raila said, you have no clue what anybody else said, but you're what perfect.
With what Ruto said?
With what Ruto said.
Oh.
There's a certain...
We've all got our opinions, and these sort of opinions, I mean, we can gladly exchange over a drink in a bar. The important thing will be when Walter Baraza stands in the court, in the ICC, and has to answer questions in a court of law. That will be the interesting thing to hear. I think that the Kenyan state, having declared that it will cooperate with the ICC, it should have, once the arrest warrant was issued, have delivered him to the ICC.
Yeah, but he's fighting that, and he might not end up there.
They are purporting to. We have an International Crimes Act which makes it clear that the ICC is as good as a part of the Kenyan courts. The warrant has been issued. Let him go to the ICC. Let us hear what he has to say in a court of law. We can all have our opinions when we're watching TV.
This is my question. Yeah. He's insisting he wants to do it here. ICC said, no, you must come there. Now, my understanding is that ICC is a complementary court to our judicial system. Gladwell just said we want to hear him in a court of law. So why is ICC having a problem
The
him doing it here?
complementarity argument has already been settled. The case is before the ICC. Baraza belongs at the ICC, and the Kenyan government should cooperate and deliver him in order to answer those charges.
Sounds like you're speaking for the ICC there, folks.
Baraza is a new case. It is not part of those cases. This is a specific case they have against him for interfering with witnesses.
Okay.
So why don't they want it to happen here? I mean, are they saying that they don't believe our court system can take care of Baraza? Really? They can say it can't take care of the president and the deputy president, but for heaven's sake. But why are they saying that? Why are they saying that he can't argue, he can't be dealt with here?
Let me ask you guys this question.
Here. We have jails.
Let me ask you guys this question. Really? The president's defense team is fighting for him not to show up at the ICC. Ruto's defense team is fighting for him to go the course. It's a little strange there, Gunjiri.
Actually, my understanding of what the president's defense team is doing is actually not fighting for him not to go to the court. This appeal that they made, which is interesting because it comes very closely to what Gladwell was saying, the prosecution is saying. Prosecution has said there's been an unprecedented interference of witnesses. Then the president's defense team has gone and filed an appeal saying they also have cases of their witnesses being interfered with, and they actually have an appeal which they're asking the court to hear. And what the argument is, could you please hear this before we proceed with our case? And so they're not actually saying we do not want to go to court. We're saying the prosecution has raised an issue about procedure in terms of the evidence and the witnesses being tampered with. And we are also raising questions about procedure.
Yeah, but they also don't want a sitting president to show up at the ICC.
But see, they haven't argued that in court yet. But that argument has been held outside court, in political conversations, conversations at the AU.
Because the game is being played at various levels.
Yes.
It would be extremely unwise to go to court and say that I don't intend to cooperate.
Which is also the AU's move, Gladwell. The AU is literally calling the hand.
Arguing that.
Correct.
That point.
They're calling the hand of the UN, saying, look.
Let's be clear. When you say the AU, this was 21 heads of state out of 53, 54 who turned up at this meeting, and some other ambassadors.
40 of them have signed.
Have signed
the petition to the UN Security Council.
To the UN Security Council.
Yes, that's a good majority.
So
that's fine.
I mean,
that's a good majority.
The positive thing is that they do intend to at least use the proper structures. Those who are members of the Rome Statute intend to use the proper structures to go to the Assembly of States parties to bring forward the arguments that they have. They will bring forward an argument against the irrelevance of official capacity.
And if a deferral doesn't come, if a deferral is rejected or if they don't get the 9 out of 15, what will the AU do? Can they withdraw troops from certain places where they are? To call the UN's hand.
They haven't said what they can do or what they will do. The only thing they said is that then the president should not go.
Right.
If this is not done. But then it's also an interesting comment. In 2003, Robin Cook, who was the Foreign Secretary of Britain, made a very interesting comment. This is the guy who was behind the ratification of the Rome Statute in Britain. And he was on BBC. And he made an interesting comment about the ICC. And he was asked if there was a conversation about Iraq, and so the interviewer asks him, aren't you guys scared that you could actually be taken in front of the ICC? And Robin Cook as Foreign Secretary of Britain said, ICC is not the kind of court that was made to deal with prime ministers of Britain or presidents of America. This is on record. Now, a lot of people say that that was a personal opinion, but this is the guy who ratified, who convinced Britain to ratify the... We've got a lot of arguments from America. Now, my problem is, AU is actually going to make their point. Kenya is being asked to go and ask 5 countries, 3 of which do not believe in the ICC, to decide whether they need to defer a case that they have at the ICC. Now, somebody would say that is the reality of how things go. But for law, for justice to be justice, there has to be a certain element of equality. You cannot judge me, or you cannot decide whether or not I should appear in a court that you do not believe in yourself. You cannot hold that. So now America could decide we will not support, we will veto your deferral. China could decide we're going to veto your deferral. Now the problem with India. Now the problem is that if that happens, you're actually vetoing a nation, another nation which is just like yours, a president who is just like you, and you're telling him you need to go to that court that I do not believe in.
Gladwell, you don't agree with that argument?
Kenya has signed on to the Rome Statute. It domesticated the Rome Statute through the International Criminal Act. And so therefore Kenya has signed on to this thing. Now, if other countries have not signed on to it, that's another discussion. That's another discussion that we can have. But at the same time, I notice in this whole discussion, you're acting as if Kenya has been forced to go to the International Criminal Court. We had every chance to do something about the post-election violence. 5 years later, we have done nothing. Now we want to go to the Security Council and say, give us another year. What will be different in that year? And what strikes me in this whole debate is none of you are mentioning the 1,133 people who died, 600,000 people who were displaced, etc. Now, we've glamorized the president and the deputy president. We've made this all about them. We make it seem as if they're going to The Hague on a state visit, and we forget crimes were committed here. People were brutalized. People were displaced. They were dispossessed. They lost their livelihood. And here we are, so much in love with the powerful.
No, we're not. You see,
yes, we are.
The problem
we're here arguing passionately as if we're their lawyers.
The problem we have, and Gladwell is showing it, is the assumption that when you have a problem with the ICC, it's because you support the president. This is my point. 1,130 people were killed. 3,000 women were raped, the ones that were reported. Over 600,000 people were forcibly displaced. In 2008, April, if you had asked the politicians in this country that 2 of them would be required to take responsibility over that mess, or any Kenyan, that 2 Kenyans or 3 Kenyans, we keep forgetting San, poor guy, but 3 Kenyans would be expected to take responsibility over that mess, no, everybody would have said no. And the reason why we signed a coalition agreement, the reason why we had a coalition government, the first in Africa, for 5 years, was because we could not agree on who was responsible for what happened. The second thing was, the one thing that we were given by the Waki Commission as the alternative to going to the ICC was to form a local tribunal. We were completely unable to form a local tribunal. And the reason we were unable to form a local tribunal, remember the president and the prime minister sitting in parliament. I don't even think I'd ever seen the president sitting in the bench in parliament for close up to midnight, trying to get members of parliament to agree to form a local tribunal. And they refused. Reason being, they felt there was a certain joint responsibility over what had happened, and everybody was scared of what a local tribunal would do. We were unable to form a local tribunal.
Now the chickens come home to roost.
Chickens have come home to roost. And the argument becomes, and this is where the victim story, for me, is important to be put in perspective. We have connected 1,100 people dead, 3,000 people, women raped, 600,000 people forcefully displaced with 3 Kenyans. That is not true. I mean, really, it is the truth.
This is something that will have to be ventilated in court.
But
the
Gladwell, even you,
has to build
Gladwell, you cannot convince me that those
Kenyans,
3 people did kill 1,100 people. We know that.
We still have a job to do. There is still a job to do here locally for all the crimes which have not been addressed.
And the people running around, walking the streets,
who are responsible for those crimes.
The neighbors.
Correct.
People who sit in, a woman is sitting down and saying, that's the guy who raped me. What I don't understand is how whether or not we have a case against Uhuru, how does that affect that guy?
Okay, here's the other thing. So now we're in this situation.
Yes.
And the folks down below us, in that august house, if you will, are about to vote out of the Rome Statute.
Well, I think they already have.
Well, the bill is going to be passed and signed and whatever, and all the way.
On that one, I completely agree with Gladwell. It's a disaster. I think it's a mistake. I don't think we should get out of the Rome Statute. Well, we can't throw the baby out of the bathwater. It will
actually not make any difference to the current cases, but it will definitely make a difference to the possibility of future violence.
What if the current cases are deferred?
If they will be deferred for 1 year.
But in a year you can apply for another deferral.
Well, I doubt
you
the
can.
security. You
yes,
can. You can keep on doing it, and we seem to be living from hand to mouth politically. Just sort of looking 2 months ahead. Yes, but it's not just trying times. This country is spiraling out of control while
and a lot of the reason is because we're all focused on ICC.
And we're all focused on ICC because two people who should never actually have been allowed to stand for political office.
So are you saying the law? Are you saying that the law
are now in power, and the whole country is focused on this? This country is really bigger than two individuals who claim that this was their personal challenge and are now trying to turn it into a regional and international challenge.
But the ICC had no problem with it. The Constitution had no problem with these individuals running.
And it's important for us to make those points.
That was Kenya's sovereign decision. The
ICC
made it very clear. They did not say that they had. They said that they were not interfering in
the country's sovereignty.
And then Kenya's sovereign decision.
Perfectly correct. And
decided they can run.
In Kenya we made that decision.
And certainly, I didn't actually support them. Just to be on the record.
I don't know who you support and what particular time you do support them.
It's on record.
At any rate, now we lost the thread of.
We signed this bill.
Yeah.
Kenya sends it forward.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a big mistake. Though it's important for me to correct Gladwell. She said that if we pull out of the Rome Statute, it has an effect on.
One credible deterrent.
Okay, what's your point?
That's not
true. Current situation is there is no credible deterrent. Nobody has ever been called to account. Will you let me finish?
You interrupted me. No, Gladwell. You interrupted. I was making a point. I was making a point.
We have the Akiwumi report.
Right.
We have all sorts of reports which name people who are responsible for all sorts of crimes. Nothing is done.
I want to make this point. Gladwell said that pulling out of the Rome Statute will have an effect on future violence, which assumes that it allows future violence can happen and nothing will happen. That's not true. Sudan is the president of Sudan, al-Bashir, is actually a fugitive. Sudan is not a signatory of the ICC.
Correct.
So you can actually, the world will not allow you to kill citizens, whether or not you're a signatory of the ICC. You will get dragged to the ICC. So this argument that pulling out of the Rome Statute means that the ICC cannot come after you is not valid. But as far as I'm concerned, the whole idea of saying that we're going to pull out of the Rome Statute because of these two cases, as far as is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And also, it doesn't affect these cases at all. But I think it's a knee-jerk reaction by parliamentarians who are trying to please the guys in the big house on the hill, as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's completely ill-advised.
Yeah, but
it doesn't make sense.
That you want to keep the ICC? Because the main point of the ICC is to target those who are most responsible, who have the command and control responsibility for the violence.
You see, I'm making the point.
Not forget with al-Bashir,
your president and your deputy president should not be called to the court because they are serving. So, now you say that it's a mistake to get rid of the International Crimes Act.
No, I wanted to make the point. I'm saying I personally believe that it's a mistake to pull out of the Rome Statute. But then I have a problem with the argument that pulling out of the Rome Statute says we can have violence in future.
At the same time,
I believe we need to stay in the Rome Statute.
We still don't know what's going on in Darfur and other parts of Sudan.
But see, the
problem
we're having with these particular cases, and that's the point I was making about why you cannot have 600,000 all the victims we have on 3 people. Kenya hasn't decided where we draw the line. We have 92, we have 97, we have 2007. 92, and the argument becomes, so in 92 you did this, you got away with it. In 97 you did this, you got away with it. In 2007, you did this, or a different group of people did this, and you're holding these ones to account. That first is a first conversation. And that's why it was so easy to make this a political conversation. It's not been a legal conversation because the question was, why us? Why now? some of us who are doing this, we have historical grievances.
Okay.
We need to draw a line at some point.
You were on the other side of the divide then. You were the one who was saying, go to the Hague,
Actually,
send these people to the Hague.
My argument, I collected 1.4 million signatures.
Today, not on your own. This was a collective action.
Well, yes.
Yes.
Actually, it's important for me to make that. I initiated a campaign that collected 1.4 million signatures. When the 10th Parliament decided they're going to pull us out of the Rome Statute, it was very clear. We said we need to stay in the Rome Statute. I have not changed that. We need to stay in the Rome Statute.
Gunjiri is contradicting himself, because if he is objecting to the fact that the president, the deputy president are before the ICC, the whole point of the ICC is to go after those three.
No, but the ICC is not connected to the president and the deputy president in these cases. This is a problem we have. We are thinking about ICC on these cases.
There is a legal case which will go on. There is a legal case which will go on. There is the political debate which will be fueled by such as Gunjiri, and obviously which will go on.
That will never end.
There will be legal realities. At the end of the day, there will be a trial. It will go on, and it will end up one way or the other.
It may not end up that way.
On that note, guys, let's take another break, because this is getting pretty hot here on the bench. It's getting really heated.
Yeah.
And when we come back, I want to talk about these folks downstairs as well, again, because they've just passed a media
Yes,
bill.
they have.
It's about to send us to the gallows almost.
After they sign that, we're not coming to the bench.
Bench will be no more.
We're coming to the bench.
Good grief. Time for another break. Plenty more after this. Chef Koinange Live. We'll be back with Gladwell, Otieno, Gunjiri, Wambogo. We're talking issues. And it's getting pretty hot out here on the roof. Stay with us. We're back in a moment.
Who's G4?
Welcome back to Chef Koinange Live. We've been calling G4S for the past hour. No sign. The bench is on fire with Gladwell Otieno of AFRICOG, Africa Center for Open Governance, and Gunjiri Wambogo of Change Associates, also writes in the Monday Star. Couple of tweets. Really interesting one here from a guy called Rix. He says, worried not for ICC. Post-election could have happened last March. It showed trials are real. Good point. Eric Nino says, Uhuruto were members of the parliament that preferred the Hague to a local tribunal. They lobbied for the cases to go to the ICC. And then Tim Ruto says, what happens if the two principles are vindicated? Shall we say justice has been served to the victims? It's a possibility, right?
Yes, obviously they're innocent until they're proven guilty, and that's a possibility.
That argument tends not to feature in a lot of the conversations we have about these cases.
No.
We talk about these two individuals as if they're guilty, and they're refusing to actually serve their sentence, which is quite unfortunate. But and the question about whether justice will be served for the victims in case these cases were not to go on, for example, or even if they were to go on, is one of the most interesting things for me, because I keep asking myself, we have this conversation about the defense, about the prosecution, and of course we have the witness, the victims' legal counsel there. But a lot of the times, nobody's actually listening to the victims' legal counsel. No. And also, I would want somebody to ground truth. Basically, go out and ask the victims what they actually have to say about where we are at this time.
Well, actually, people have gone out and asked the victims what they wanted. The victims' legal representatives have asked them what they wanted. But there is the reality that the ICC is not going to satisfy the desire and the need of the victims for restorative justice. There are thousands of victims out there who will need all sorts of measures. They will need psychosocial measures, they will need protection, they will need rehabilitation, and a lot of this is not being done, it's not being addressed. So we cannot think that the ICC is going to come in and solve all problems. No. The ICC is a court of last resort.
It's not a panacea.
It only steps in when a country is unwilling or unable to address crimes of humanity. It only addresses the very highest echelons of responsibility, and the country still has the responsibility to deal with all the perpetrators in between, and all the victims who are not going to receive what they need from this process.
Nobody cares.
At this moment,
nobody seems to care.
Because the entire machinery of state and the resources are focused on the two principals who are indicted at The Hague.
This is an interesting point I have about that particular issue of other people. The Constitution actually allows other people to take suspects. You can actually create cases of what happened, and you can actually initiate cases in court. One of the things that I'd like to ask is, how come nobody's doing that? How come we are all focused? As she says, we are all focused on these two cases. Why isn't anybody starting cases here? For the middle level perpetrators, for the lower perpetrators.
Actually, there is a case in court right now brought by a coalition of women's organizations and civil society organizations on gender-based violence, and the government has not responded, has not turned up in court, even 2 months past the deadline set by the court for them to appear to respond on these cases of gender-based violence. So there have been efforts to achieve accountability, but it's been extremely difficult. We've seen the reports of task forces which have said there's no evidence, or we can't bring the case to court. The Directorate of Public Prosecutions really doesn't have much capacity.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've seen a policeman who was filmed on television shooting a suspect getting away with it because the evidence was botched by the police.
We're getting off the topic here a little bit, but let me just say this. Obviously, we're Kenyans. That's in our DNA. We're obsessed with this case.
Yes,
and it seems like nothing will move
until this case gets
If you ask Kenyans what really moves them, they will tell you, and you do this through opinion polls, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
They will tell you, we're worried about insecurity, we're worried about the cost of living, we're worried about unemployment. These are the top three things that will come in response.
But now, the media everywhere.
Because I mean, it is a topic which I'm not saying that Kenyans aren't interested in the ICC, but that's what the media is pushing every day. The front page news
actually, it's not just the media. This has been pushed by a lot of factors, and I think it's important for us to appreciate. For example, the reason why as a country has a sovereign scope is because you need to make sure that everything that happens in that country, whether it's a judicial, executive, parliament, works to the benefit of the country. Everything must serve the interests of the country. Now, for me, I keep asking myself, and you haven't asked me where I changed, where I turned around.
Yeah.
And for me, this was a point, because the minute, I wrote on January 14th of this year, and I said, do we actually understand the implications of voting the president and deputy president who are indicted by the ICC? And I broke it down: security, the constitution, all the problems we would have, and including sanctions, which were then being bandied around. Then on April 1st, which everybody thought was an April Fool's joke, which was after...
Kunjiri, I noticed that you used the word I.
Which everybody...
Regularity.
It's because I wrote. I'm talking about stuff I wrote.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, I wrote on April 1st, I wrote an article saying, we have now elected Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. And the points I made in January came into being. And for me, it wasn't not tenable. It was just not tenable to have them and the ICC at the same time. One of them would have to give. And for me, it became very clear, bitter pill to swallow. It became very, very clear that if I had to choose between the ICC and Kenya, I was going Kenya. I was not going to allow Kenya to suffer because we have a case.
And this is not based on the law. It's not based on logic.
But we're not talking about law. We're talking about
individuals.
I'm talking about
realities.
My reality, which is why I'm here. Gladwell, you're here to give your perspective and your reality.
That there is a case on at the ICC, and it's not about to stop.
And it's not going to end anytime soon.
No.
We actually don't know
that case. That case will go on until it's stopped by the court for whatever reason. But at any rate, that is a reality.
Okay, what if all three are vindicated, Gladwell? What if all three?
They will have gone through the process.
Correct.
And they will have been vindicated.
And then what?
We still have the same issues to deal with here.
Actually, the other question I'd like to add, I know I'm not hosting this, but the other question I keep wanting to ask is, so what if they are jailed?
That's the other point.
Then what?
And then...
And you see, that's a question that nobody wants to answer. Yeah. Then what?
If they are found guilty, the law is clear.
They're going for 50 years. You don't have a president, don't have a deputy. So what happens?
Well, I think the Constitution is clear on what happens in that case. Yeah.
Speaker takes over for a while.
Okay, you're talking about the possibility.
I'm talking about the realities.
Yes, but the case has started. That train has left the station.
The advantage
and therefore, it will have to go to whatever conclusion it will have to go to.
And my question is,
and we will have to deal with the consequences of that.
As a Kenyan, it's important for us to think about the consequences of every action that we are involved in and ask ourselves, so here we are, we're in a court process that is going to have one of two options. They will be vindicated, they'll walk home, and then we'll still have to deal with the victims. Or they'll be jailed, and we will still have a country that has to now figure out how to do another election, And I ask myself, so reality, and this is the advantage of the fact that I am from a political background. I deal with reality. I would love, I mean, I have had an NGO background, then I did a political background. Politics tends to hit you with reality, and you stop, you must bridge idealism, which is what Gladwell is having right here on this stage, and reality. You must actually face up to the fact that if Uhuru is jailed, we're going to have a problem. If Ruto is jailed, we're going to have a problem. Either of them. If both of them are jailed, no, we're going to have a problem. This is something we must talk about right now.
We have a problem right now. And the
which is the other thing that nobody wants to accept as well. We have a problem right now.
The solution you're proposing isn't a solution.
No, it's not.
It's not going to happen
I'm not proposing a solution. I'm telling us to be objective and have this conversation and accept that we will have to, we have been asked to choose between two, not two bad options.
Okay, let me ask you folks this.
Yes.
You first, Gladwell.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario with these cases? What Koinange said, they all go to jail? Worst case?
Well, the worst case scenario would be
from civil society point of view.
Would be a repeat of violence on an even worse scale than there was in 2008. So I think these cases have begun, and we, as Koinange is saying, we voted for leaders, or Kenyans voted for leaders, or the Supreme Court made a decision which led to the confirmation of leaders in power who are at The Hague. Now that has consequences. It is scary. None of this is a pleasant.
Worst case.
This is a scary
worst
part.
Case.
Gladwell supports the ICC process and accepts on this bench.
Right now,
accept on this bench that if they get jailed, we'll have violence.
I don't accept
You've
that
just
because
said
it hasn't happened yet. I'm saying there are very many possibilities.
You've just said as a scenario is that if this happened, we'd have violence. And I'm sitting there and I'm asking myself.
We may have the worst case
actually, the word you said is that we could have violence to a higher scale than 2007. And I'm asking myself, so we are in this and we know this here going in.
But
how are we still going in?
Stop it? How do you stop it? We don't have a choice.
That's where we are. That's where we are.
Find ways.
Best case.
The best case is that we, at the local level, we don't give up the search for accountability for the crimes that were committed here locally. The ICC case has started. We went into that maybe with our eyes closed or our eyes open, but it has started and it will go on.
And you're still against them trying them locally, and locally I mean Arusha or a court nearby.
That issue has been settled. That issue has been settled. The case will continue in The Hague.
You're still against, I guess.
So
best case scenario would be for us to generate our own internal processes to sort that issue out. I have completely given up on those cases of 2007. I do not believe we'll ever get to the bottom of it. I personally don't believe Kenya is willing to handle the truth about what happened in 2007. I think we need to draw a line and decide at what point you start holding people accountable. We will try and hold people accountable in 2007. The reason we're having this fight and people are fighting for other people is because there's a certain element of shared responsibility over those crimes, and it's going to keep happening. And that's so, in my opinion, we need to be real. We draw a line in the sand and we say, you know what? Bad things happened.
Impunity wins.
Which is actually a very unfortunate situation.
Just be clear,
1992. We've already accepted impunity won in 1992.
Correct. And you're accepting
we've
it
accepted impunity won in 1997. Yeah. We now must decide. I mean, for me, what Gladwell has actually said
is that will win
and unfortunately, is that it's a lose-lose situation. If you say impunity doesn't win and proceed with these cases, and perchance these people are found guilty, we have violence again. Yeah. She just said high possibility.
There is no best case.
If we do not, and we stop it now, the only violence we have is the last one.
There is no option for stopping it now.
Actually, the only violence we have is the last one.
For stopping it now.
More tweets. Senator Murkomen who's in the building earlier on, I think, right?
Yeah.
He says there are two kinds of victims of PEV, those attacked and those falsely accused thereafter.
The way to find out whether they've been falsely accused is to let the case go on and let the evidence be heard, and hopefully to have a fair verdict.
Okay, Sally Claire says, we asked that question earlier on, what if they are both jailed as Kenya as a country doesn't stop running? We go into elections.
Yeah.
Right.
We've had other
Come
presidents.
on, guys. Let's be honest. Let's be real. If you're going to jail Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, the reality of the fact is that we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
Fact. Whether we like him, whether we like them or not, and as I said, I did not vote for them. But the fact of the reality is that we will have a problem as a country.
We have a problem now.
Absolutely. Chisoni Dennis, you are right, Gladwell. Security, cost of living, unemployment is what we want addressed. But that seems to be on page 17, 18 and the back pages. Because of this one story, that won't go away.
It just
Well,
won't go away.
we said before that you will have a president and a deputy president who are too distracted to attend to the real problems of this country.
And you see,
And
we
this
have
is
an
where
option.
we are now.
We have
They
an
were
option.
voted in.
We have an option.
By
They were voted in.
by
Now we have two
6.1.
options after that happened. We could do what Gladwell is doing. Keep telling people, we told you. We told you you're going to have a problem. You told you. Now suck up, take the punishment. The problem is that as you take that punishment, we are all taking that punishment. Let me finish, Gladwell. Please, let me finish.
You have said the case should be stopped.
Gladwell, you need to let me finish. So
You
we have
have
two
spoken
options.
much more
We have
than
two
I have.
options. We are saying that I told you so. Even I have the right of saying that because I said it. But we have a reality that these two guys are president and deputy president, and they live in this country, and anything that happens is going to affect us. So we must suck up and say, look, I really don't like what we have, but what are we going to do from here? We can't keep going back.
Frankly, I
and say
think
we
this
should
is the
never have done
attitude we've
this.
always had, which is not to have any sort of principles, to keep on turning according to whichever way the political wind blows, and to say, okay, so we had a problem, but let's move on, let's forget about that. This is not an option. We have been dragging these crimes along with us for all these decades, and the reason that they keep recurring is because there is no accountability. We are going to have to build some level of accountability, and we can do that at the national level, we can do that at the regional level. There's no reason why the African Union hasn't been serious about building up institutions which can actually secure accountability without the ICC having to step in. So we're going to have to get accountability. It's going to be difficult. The next few years will not be easy, but that's where we are.
Absolutely. Okay, that's the final word on that one. I guess this is not going to go away.
It's not gonna
We did it
go
real
away.
quick.
Yes.
Media bill. MPs, they passed this draconian bill that's going to set us back, if you will.
It's going to take us back.
Isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, will you be able to write on Mondays?
I'm thinking about
I
it.
think Bunjiri will be able to write.
You think you'll be
Oh, you think I'll be able to write?
I certainly
You think he'll turn
so.
again?
I don't think you're threatening the status quo in any way in what
But
you
see,
write.
this is what I do. This is what I find very interesting.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time working
Yes.
with Gladwell, and I said I wrote a lot of articles.
Right.
And until the one I wrote that didn't agree with her opinion on this issue,
Again, you're
we were fine.
misrepresenting me. We were not fine, and you know very well I've told you to your face from
we've
the very
worked
beginning.
together,
I've always been
Gladwell.
very frank with you, and we have worked together. We will work together in the future, and I will always be frank with you when I feel that you are a little bit too quick to turn around when situations
see,
change. And you call
no,
it pragmatism.
it's pragmatism,
I call it lack
actually.
of principle.
well, that's
sorry.
That's you call it lack of principle. I call it pragmatism.
Yeah.
I am in the political arena. She's a civil society person.
Correct.
She has to work. She decides what she works with. I work with what I have.
Yeah. Kenneth Njero is asking, who funds AfriCog?
Go to our website, www.africog.org. You will see all the names of all the organizations that fund us, how much they give us, and how we spend it. That information is freely available. We're not hiding anything.
Actually,
Our audit reports are up on the website. So
And when they throw the name George Soros around, would you
this
also...
is the Open Society Foundation.
Correct.
They also fund us, and that's on our website. And not for one moment have we hidden it, nor are we ashamed of it.
Gunjiri, you are still a proud member of ODM,
yes, I am.
and you will remain.
Yes, unless they give me reason to leave.
Yeah, but probably ODM thinks that you are TNA or Jubilee.
I mean, that tends to happen because I come from Central Province, but really I really can't help what people think. I was the political affairs director of Raila Odinga. I mean, and I served him well. I have a good letter that says I actually served him well, that he gave me after the campaign. So if I had messed up, I would most probably would have told me that. But then it's also interesting. I mean, ODM has always had an interesting position. ODM's position was that we should have had a local tribunal. So I keep hearing people telling me that, Guji, when you say when you talk against the ICC, you're breaking ranks with the party. First, there's absolutely nothing wrong with somebody breaking ranks with the party. Sure. It doesn't mean that when you get into a party, whether you're TNA or UDF or TIP, you must agree with what they say. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, really, that's not the reason why you join a party. You join a party to add value to it with your ideas and to challenge them.
All right. Zawadi says, does anybody stop to think that the West would like us to go to violence so that we can pay?
Of course.
I actually don't accept this thing that's gained such currency, that there are people in the West rubbing their hands and saying, oh, now they're doing badly, we're so happy. I think, look, we're 50 years old as a country. We've got to get over this sort of rebellious adolescent phase that we seem to be stuck in. I actually don't think that they waste that much thought on us, to tell you the truth. And actually, when they do, I don't think that they're sort of frolicking in glee. Let me finish. I really think that it's a complete misrepresentation, and actually probably you're overemphasizing your importance to them.
My opinion on that issue is that we really shouldn't be thinking too much about the West unless they actually have to define a direction for us. Okay. And that's what happens with the UN Security Council.
Correct.
When we have to go to them to define a position forward for us, then really they're going to come back into the sitting room and we're going to talk about them.
Abdullah Hassim says, let me tell you before the world, Jeff, Kenya will not fight if UK Ruto are jailed. Those are two people.
Good
Kenya, 39.
Yes.
Where does, and he said he's, okay, let me just leave
What were you going to say?
Let me just leave it at that. Let me just leave it at that.
You almost stepped over some lines there.
What about reconciliation and national healing? Can justice really apply in a vacuum? That's Shem Minor.
Justice, you see, we had a very interesting scenario, Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
They had to come to an agreement. They had to decide which way they were going. They had justice and they had peace. And they had to make a choice. And sometimes you actually, as much as Gladwell will not agree with me, sometimes you actually are forced to choose between peace and justice. Ideally, they should apply together. But we have a lot of countries in the world, including America in the Civil War, including Britain and Northern Ireland, that had to decide we're not going to punish anybody.
We would have to be in a situation where we have a leadership who has the welfare of the country at heart.
Okay.
So she's assuming
by the decision.
Closing points. Closing thoughts.
Well, we've had a long evening here, but I would say that we embarked on this road and we're on it, and we still need to secure accountability locally. We still need to restore the victims, to respect them, to stop being so fixated on the president and the deputy president as if they are the victims. They're doing fine. They have the most expensive lawyers in the world. They're using my tax money to defend themselves at the ICC and to bring their retinues to the ICC. Let's focus on the victims. This is about the ordinary people who suffered during the post-election violence and during all the other spates of political violence, which are even ongoing right now as we speak.
Ujiri.
Let's focus on the victims. And I had an engagement with a gentleman who lost a baby in the Kemba fire. And I asked him, so what do you think about this? And he told me, we as victims are more interested in what happens forward than what happens backwards. And sometimes I ask myself, especially when we sit here and agree that we're in a process that could take us into another series of violence, what victims are we talking about? If we're interested, if we're supporting a process that could actually give us more victims, really, we must draw a line at some point and say, look, these are the victims we have. What are we going to do about them? And how are we going to ensure that we do not? And that might sometimes take you biting the bullet on some issues and saying, okay, we're not going to do this so that we can do this. There's a lot of work that can be done for the victim that's not been done. I mean, hasn't been done for the victims. There's a lot more, and part of it is the confusion of this conversation we're having.
Ujiri Wambugu, Gladwell Otieno, you once worked together before.
No, I'm sure we'll work again.
Will you?
Yes.
I'll think about it. Carefully, very carefully.
Oh my.
Sure we will.
One my. Great conversation, folks. Thank you. We've got to keep talking. Yes. That's the most important. Bottom line, we keep talking, because I keep saying the moment we stop talking, it's the moment we start fighting. And there's a lot ahead for this nation, so much potential. All hands need to be on deck. And yes, we need to turn that corner, whichever way we're going to do it. That's the bottom line. Chef Koinange live every Wednesday and Thursday nights with guests like Gujiri and Gladwell. You simply cannot afford to miss a show like this. Whoa, the tweets are coming in thick and fast. Let's keep the conversation going. That's what it's all about, folks. Thanks for joining us only on Kenya's television network, KTN. Good night and good luck.